Okay, it's about time we did something about this guy. Probably the worst figure in the entire 1/12 range. Diabolical, wearing what can only be described as a Bedouin tent. You can't pose him, the thing floops around. It's awful, awful, awful. And he's got a tiny head. There's so many things wrong with this figure. So I'm going to try and see if we can make him a little bit better by using everyone's favourite wandering Jedi, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm also going to steal the head off a Yavin Luke. I often pick these up because you can get them for less than £10. Super cheap, so always like to pick one up because I think it's probably the best A New Hope head that we've got. Certainly in the Black Series range. Let me know if you beg to differ. I do have a Figure Arts, SH Figure Arts Luke, which is kind of nice, but I really like the Black Series. These are super expensive as well, frankly. But I really like the Black Series. There's something really toy-like about them that you don't really get with the Figure Arts. The Figure Arts are a bit more fiddly, a bit more like a sort of grown-up model. I like the Black Series because they remind me of being a kid in the 80s and having a toy in my hand. And I think the 1/12 scale to me now, compared to when I was 6 or what have you, that feels appropriate, that the scale feels right. So I love the Black Series. I just think this is dreadful. So let's do something about it. Let's go to the painting cupboard. It's like to the Batcave. Diddle-diddle-diddle-doo. To the painting cupboard. So here they are. We've got our terrible Luke. Bust them open, and with a bit of pop and boil with the boiling water, pop them off. And even when you put them back together, you can see here I've got Luke's legs on Obi-Wan torso, Obi-Wan arms, and immediately it actually looks better. I'm going to pop the other bits and pieces to one side, perhaps use them for something else. When you put the tiny head on here, you notice just how small that head is. I mean, Obi-Wan's body isn't freakishly large, just looks weird. So I'm going to take the head off our Yavin Luke. We know he's probably one of the best heads, and already that looks pretty cool, doesn't it? That looks pretty cool. So we're just going to make some adjustments to the top. We're going to keep the belt, obviously, and let's take a look at that first. So for the bottom half of the tunic, this can pull off here. I don't think that needs to be attached. The first job is to really strip away the bits of Obi-Wan's belt, and all we want to do here is just make room. So I'm just going to cut that bit off, going careful with the fingers. I'm pretty sure I'm about to demonstrate poor safety technique. So just be careful, cut away, and then you're left with, don't try and cut it all in one go. These pieces can be really helpful actually for other bits of customizations, the little bits of belt that you get left over. And now I'm just trying to chip it down so that it's as flat as possible with the knife. So I'm just gently, bit by bit, scraping away. If you scrape away too much, and I found this on a previous sort of go, is that you can leave a hole in the original, and that's tricky then. So just take it steady, a little bit at a time, and then flatten him out. Just chip away at it until it's pretty much flat. And you can do that almost entirely with the knife. Might come back later and touch it up. But now Luke's belt should sit nice and flat against what we have. But of course, Luke's belt is slightly slimmer. But don't worry, it just pops open. There's a little clasp. I'm going to cut the clasp off later and place it round. It leaves a little gap, but I'm going to fill in with a bit of sculpting clay. Just going to fill that bit in a bit later and then paint it. So it's super easy to do. That leaves us in a pretty good place. Pop it back on to check. May as well stick the body on here. We can sort of see what we're working with. It's a lot easier to pop them off when they're hot, but still get them back on. And there we go. So that's a good start. I'm going to use the SH Figure Arts as reference for the jacket, but it's still pretty straightforward. And again, we're just going to start just shaving off the ruching is that the right word? Ruching. I'm going to go with it. Off Obi-Wan's jacket to start with. So we're just trying to get it nice and smooth. And as before, we're just taking a little bit at a time. Just a little bit. It's kind of awkward. I actually made a bit of a mess of this and made a couple of cut marks accidentally on the chest and neck. So I had to go back and like do a little bit of filling and painting, which is fiddly, but you don't need to make these mistakes. You're better than me. You can do this. So just go careful and you won't have to do that touch up later. So again, just chipping away, and then we can get it pretty flat, as flat as we can. And then once this is done, we're then ready to think about shaping. So it's just gonna take it down this way. And then when you feel confident you've got roughly the right angle, we're gonna cut it open. Again, take a couple of goes, no need to rush it. And from there, we are then going to fold the piece on the right across the piece on the left. So it's just got a little bit of overlap. And then, yeah, just make sure you've got the right sort of shape, particularly for the piece on the right, because that's the bit we're going to see. So just spend a little bit of time working out the angle. Tidy up the edges a little bit. Easier to do it now than when it's been glued. And at this point, that's pretty good, isn't it? That's pretty good. And then just going to grab a bit of super glue in a sec and stick one over the top of the other just so it overlaps a little bit. So we've gone from like a ruched smock to the sort of dojo karate top that Luke has. There we go. And obviously with super glue, be careful. Look, stuck myself to... Oh no. It's a trap! Yeah. Okay, classic. Don't glue yourself to yourself if you can avoid that. Schoolboy error. But there we go. And Luke's... I'm just going to stick him on with a bit of blue tack in there. You're not going to see it. Still gives him the ability to move the head around. And just to change the shape slightly, I'm going to try this sculpting clay. I haven't used middle putt before, but it works the same as a lot of sculpting clays. It comes in two parts, and it is a bit an irritant for the hands. So stick on your rubber gloves and mix them together 50-50, so half and half. Just going to use a tiny bit, although I made far too much of this. Just twist them together, roll them, twist them, roll them, twist them. And then after about 10 minutes of leaving, I've obviously cut that bit out, then it's sort of good to work with. As it starts to get a little more solid, that's when it's best to work with. And here I'm just going to roll it into a very thin, long sausage. And so all we're looking to do with this is to make the edge of the jacket, so it's got like almost like a little hem collar. So I'm going to make a nice thin strip and place it over here, and it sticks really nicely to there. Just be patient, give it a little, just press it in a little bit, and just handy to have a bit of water around as well. So have a little bit of water to one side just to help you smooth it out and fix it down. By the time it's dried, you notice I've taken the gloves off. I don't find it an irritant or odd on the fingers, so I think it's mainly when presumably it's in some sort of chemical state. I mean, everything's in a chemical state, but it's in some sort of I don't know, something's happening in terms of bonding, presumably, when you've immediately mixed them together. But once it's had its sort of 10-15 minutes to settle, I've never had a problem. It doesn't cause me any issues. Wash my hands afterwards, obviously. And so I'm just getting a rough shape. It looks a little bit like Father Christmas at this stage, like it's a big fluffy. So I'm just going to smooth it down, just blend it in a little bit. You know, ideally I could have made that a bit thinner, but I'm kind of happy with it. I'm going to smooth it down so it'll be okay. Now just tidying up the edges. I've managed to get it all over the neck, which isn't ideal. Probably should have took the neck off, but I wanted it as reference, so I kept it on. And now I'm just making, as I sort of first of all blend it into the rest of the top so it's not too hard a line. And then I'm going to make some creases so it looks like, still looks like material, so there's some creases in the actual hem. Is that what it is? Hem, in the hem itself. And now while I've got the middle part out, I'm going to just extend the belt a little bit. So I've just wedged a bit in and then cut it so it's nice and even. Try and pull it up in one go. And then I'm going to set that to one side to dry, and I'll paint it so it blends in a minute. There we go. So fill in that extra gap. Now just sort of faffing and smoothing. I don't know what this tool is supposed to be used for, but this is what I'm using it for. It's just to make those sort of material crease lines, just so it doesn't look too stiff, so it's got a bit of movement to it. Just dabbing in, smoothing out, and where I made it too deep, then I go back and just smooth it out with my finger, with a wetted finger. Still trying to keep the edges nice and clean and tidy. And once it's dry, we're kind of ready to paint. I've also filled in, you can see just above the belt there was a big bit of ruching, and I just tried to fill that in a little bit so that, I don't know, it just looked odd on Luke's jacket. It looked fine on Obi-Wan's, but it just looked odd for Luke's, so just filled it in a bit. Here, just mixing up a colour, sort of working out roughly what's a nice colour for this top. The figure arts I don't think is particularly close to the movie. I've looked at movie stills and he's pretty white. His jacket's pretty white, so I've just gone for a very slightly off-white, and that's pleasing me, so I'm going to go with that. Also, you get the nice contrast with the beige sandy coloured trousers if you go for the white top, so I went with that. But you know, feel free to follow the figure arts version. I like to use a hairdryer just because I'm impatient and I want to get on. And that bit that I mentioned I filled in, it was, once I sprayed it, I could see it was standing up a little bit proud. So once I put the paint on, it became clear. So I'm just sanded that down a bit. Here, just filling in the belt. A bit brown, I think that's mahogany. Let's set that aside to dry. And then only because I cut into the chest, I had to go back and do a little bit of painting. Could have left it perfectly as it was. There wasn't anything wrong with the colour, I don't think. And now just joining all that bit that I added on has fallen off, so I'm just going to glue that into place. Yeah, just pop a bit of super glue, trying to glue myself to myself again. There we go, and then touch up with a little bit of brown, just so it's all tidy together. Okay, starting to take shape. Very nice, and just tidying up bits where I've got bits of the sculpting clay. Pop in the hands. That was fiddly to do. I cut out like 15 failed attempts to squeeze the hands back in, but I didn't want to heat it up too much because I just painted it. So little touch-ups, and I'm gonna call that good to go. So, here he is. What do you think? I have to say I'm rather pleased with myself. It's not perfect. I know he's not perfect. It's a little bit rough around some of the edges with some of the the sculpting clay that I used. But I'm pretty pleased. I think he looks, I actually prefer him. I'm biased because, you know, I had a hand in this, but I think I prefer him to the figure arts guy. Yeah, I'm really pleased with him. I think I'm going to do a couple more for different dioramas and things I've got going on. But let me know what you think. I'm going to tackle a few more of these old, I nearly said Old Testament, same thing in a way, the original trilogy, the OT. The original trilogy figures over the next coming weeks. So keep a lookout if you liked it. Let me know what you thought. Was it too long? Was it too short? Was there too much of me? Was there not enough of me? Probably not that. But I think I'm going to give myself 7 out of 10. Let me know what you think and be interested to share your thoughts. All right, take it easy.
Get us out of here!